So let me ask a question here. How many of you are aware that Democrats and the left want to pack the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
All right, so everybody knows that. Is there anybody here that thinks that's a good idea? All right, okay, so I can just dispense with some of the arguments. I'm here to make 4 points. If you remember these, you can go to sleep for the rest of my speech. The first is that if we don't do something, we are going to end up with a packed Supreme Court. It's not an if, it's a when. You know, if I told you that there was a meteor headed for, Earth, and it was going to hit tomorrow morning, we'd adjourn the meeting, right? I'm telling you that the left is going to pack the court and undo everything we've done for the last 50 years if we don't do something. It's not if, it's when. So this is not just one issue, in my opinion. I'm retired. This is, I think, probably the most important issue that's faced us as Republicans and as conservatives for a generation. I've never seen something that would wipe us all out that is right now almost unstoppable. The second point I made, which I think most of you already know, is that it's bad. It's really bad. If they pack the court, they will rig the rules. We're out of business for a generation. My third point is that there is, in fact, a strategy. No one knows whether it will work. I'm not here to tell you, Pollyanna, that we're going to be able to make it work. There is a strategy for stopping it, for making sure it doesn't happen. But we haven't done anything like this for 75 years. We haven't done an amendment to the Constitution that limits government power since 1951 when we did the Presidential Term Limits Amendment. So there is a strategy. But the most important piece is this is not something I can do. This is not something that politicians in Washington are going to do, right? I'm Paul Revere, but you think, what did Paul Revere do? All he did was he told people the British were coming. And then a few people, a couple of hundred people decided to get up early in the morning and go out and get shot at by the most powerful army in the world. All I can do is raise the alarm. But if you don't decide to do something, we lose. So my test today is at the end of my speech, do you clap and say, that was a nice job, good luck, Roman? Or do you actually decide that there is something you can do? And that'll be my test of whether I've been able to persuade you. Because if I can't persuade you, there's no reason for you to do anything. New York, as it's just been said, New York is actually the fulcrum of what happens in 2024. That's not a usual position for Republicans in New York to be in. But the seats that will decide control of the House are going to be decided right here in New York. There are 5 of them, and they're on that memo. And we believe that, we can get a certain number of votes by talking about, inflation and the border and all the issues we talked about in 2022 that didn't give us a decisive majority. We think there's an issue that we didn't talk about in 2022 that might win the last few undecided votes that could help us win in these races. And that issue is, in fact, the packing of the Supreme Court. Now, your job is not just to agree with me that, oh yeah, this is important. I want to give you facts so that you can persuade other people that this is an urgent problem, that it's not just another issue. So let me tell you why I and others believe we are headed for the train wreck of court packing. First is that there are now 60 Democrats who are explicitly for a constitutional amendment, a law that would increase the number of judges on the court, justices on the court, from 9 to 13. Now, 60 is not that big a number. But then you look behind the 60, and you see the largest teachers union in the country, the National Education Association, the 2 largest pro-abortion, pro-choice, whatever you want to call it, organizations in the country, NARAL and Planned Parenthood. You see the League of Conservation Voters. You see a coalition of major civil rights organizations who are talking about it. I just had a conversation last night with a Democrat who is a leader of one of these civil rights coalitions. And I said, what's your priority for 2024? And he said, basically, expanding the court. So these groups have all sent a message to Democrats that if you want our support in the primary and general election, you better be for court expansion. Now, Joe Biden says, well, I'm not for court packing. In 2019, he was very persuasive. He said, well, you know, if we add 3 justices, the other side will add 3 justices, and the court will lose all respect. Of course, he was right. But of course, this is the same Joe Biden who said that the filibuster was a good idea, was an essential feature of the Senate, until the left turned the screws, and now he says the filibuster is a relic of Jim Crow. So anybody that thinks that Joe Biden is going to stand up to the left and stop court packing doesn't know Joe Biden, right? And they don't understand where the Democrats are. And if you want a little bit more ammunition to talk to your friends, in 2020, Joe Biden very famously said, well, I'm not going to tell you where I stand. The voters don't deserve to know where I stand on court packing. I'm going to appoint a commission. So Joe Biden appointed a commission, handpicked all the members. And they talked about, should we pack the court or shouldn't we pack the court? The one thing that their commission would never discuss was whether there should be an amendment to ban court packing. And that's in spite of the fact that the amendment to ban court packing, which I'm here to talk to you about today, had more support in Congress than any other Supreme Court reform, and we had hundreds of people calling in and emailing the commission, say, talk about the Keep 9 Amendment more at the beginning of the commission than for any other issue, but they wouldn't talk about it. So when a bunch of thieves are deciding, are we going to rob a 7-Eleven tonight, or maybe not tonight, and somebody says, hey, let's outlaw robbery, you wonder what their career plan is, right? So now let's look at the Congress. Pelosi and Schumer both say all options are on the table, right? Where a bunch of thieves outside your house and you say you're going to rob my house and they say all options are on the table, it means you're on their menu, right? So Pelosi and Schumer are getting ready, and then let's look at their strategy. What are the Democrats actually going to do, right? Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to create a voting rights exception for the filibuster, right? Who supports that? Every single Democrat in the Senate. They need one more vote. One more vote in the Senate, and they can get rid of the filibuster for voting rights issues. What do? Next thing they do is they add D.C. as a state. So instead of having 50 votes in the Senate, they have 52 votes in the Senate. And what do they do next? They expand justices on the court. So we are essentially 1 vote away in the Senate and 4 votes away in the House. And the bad news is that we probably can win in 2024 and stop the Democrats from taking the House, the Senate, and the White House. But can we do that for 5 elections in a row? Probably not. You look back in American history, and there has never been, in the last century, a period of longer than 14 years between Democratic trifecta majorities. We are on track for another Democratic majority. Not maybe this year, maybe not maybe next year, but sooner or later it's going to happen. And when it happens, when the dam breaks, we all drown. That's the bad news. And, you say, well, what would really be the impact of a packed court? Well, it's coming, right? And they're coming for the lives of the unborn. They're coming for your religious freedom. They're coming for your Second Amendment rights. They're coming for control of your children and your schools. They're coming for your affordable energy by unleashing the bureaucrats. They're coming for your savings with a wealth and an income tax that taxes you not on what your income is, but on your appreciated assets. The Democrats are already talking about it. It's unconstitutional, but they're coming for your savings. They're coming for your free speech. Big tech is going to censor you, and the court won't do anything about it if they control it. And most important, they're coming for the integrity of our elections. Mm-hmm. You can't have honest elections if the court is controlled by one side. and they can replace judges at will, right? Right now, the court is conservative, but it's independent. Trump can't control it, McConnell can't control it. It's independent, and we've had an independent Supreme Court for 150 years, and the Democrats hate it. They want it to be under the control of politicians, specifically themselves. So that's what's at stake. If you care about any of those issues, we can't win if they pack the court. So the question is, how do we stop them? We can't just stop them by opposing packing the court, right? Because sooner or later, they're going to get a majority and Democrats aren't going to listen. So we have to take away the power of politicians to pack the court before the Democrats get their next majority. Can we do it? I don't know. All I know is that if we fail, everything I've worked for my adult life goes down in flames, right? I've been doing this since 1967 when I first joined the College Republicans at Stanford University, right? So that's why I'm doing this in my retirement, because I don't see enough other people focusing on it. Everybody else is focusing on the issues that get all the attention in the media and raise all the money when you send out the emails. Not enough people are focusing on what I call the pancreatic cancer of our political health. It's going to kill us if we don't do something. So what is our strategy? Well, there's an amendment I'm here to talk to you about. It's called the Keep 9 Amendment. As Barbara said, all it says is the Supreme Court of the United States shall be composed of 9 justices. It's backed by 200 members of Congress. It was first introduced in Congress by a Democrat. And by the way, why did we do that? Because Ed Meese, Reagan's Attorney General, said, that's the only way you're going to get this done. He's been our mentor on this. So 200 members of Congress, a total of 1,000 elected officials across the country. Polls showed that voters would back this by 2-to-1. Even Democrats, a plurality of Democrats, 46 to 34 would support it. Got one problem. No one has heard of it. It would be very popular if people knew about it. No one has heard of it. So what is our strategy? Our strategy is to take this amendment and do 3 things. One, we have to get every Republican to start talking about it, to endorse it. That means members of Congress, it means candidates running for statewide office, candidates running for national office. Think of all those presidential candidates who want to run in 2028, they should all be talking about this, right? Have to get every Republican to support it. State legislators need to talk about it. It's a state issue because any constitutional amendment has to be ratified by 2/3 of the states. So every state legislator can talk about this. We want them to support it. We want them to give speeches about it, warn that if the left wins, they're going to pack the court, and we want them to write about it in their newsletters and the political stuff they send out. So that's the first goal, unite Republicans. Now, Barbara has done an amazing job. Every single Republican member of Congress in New York supports the amendment. But we need the candidates to support it too, and we need Republicans to talk about it. Second thing we need to do is we need to make this amendment better known. Now, the media is not going to help us, right? The media is in the tank for the left. Oh no, court packing's not an issue, right? Oh no, nothing's happening here. Well, it's the single most, maybe the single most fundamental change that might take place as a result of the 2024 election. A president serves for 4 years. An independent Supreme Court is 100 years. So we need to talk about it. How do we do that? Letters to the editor, social media, calling talk radio shows, talking to people one-on-one, getting politicians and opinion leaders to talk about it. We need to spread the word. And then the third thing we need to do is in the races that are going to be close, and there are 5 of them that are on the sheet that I handed out in New York, you know where they are, right? We need to educate voters in those areas about Keep 9. Make sure that they know that a Republican candidate supports the amendment, and then get the Democrats to tell us whatever baloney they want to give us on whether they'll support Keep 9. If you ask a Democrat, are you for court packing? They'll say no. If you ask them in a close race, if you ask them where they stand on the Keep 9 amendment, they won't answer. And if we can let voters know in the fall that there's a Republican who wants to ban court packing and a Democrat who's lying when they say that they're for it, that they're not for it, we might actually win the last 1 or 2% of the votes that give us the victory. So that's our strategy. So then the question is, what can you do, right? And we're asking people, I'm asking people in this room to do 3 easy things. One is call or write or talk to your elected officials your member of Congress, your state senator, your state assemblyman if they're Republicans, and ask them if they'll endorse the amendment, and if they've already endorsed it, if they'll talk about it. You know? And if you do that, you have power. Those elected officials need you. How many minutes? 5. They need you. And so you can ask them to do easy things. You know, they might not support term limits for you, but they will support an amendment that they know is necessary, and they'll move it up on their priority list if you talk to them about it. So that's the first thing. The other thing you can do is you can write your Democratic elected officials, and then you can have a little, you know, party and share the lies you get from the elected officials. I'm opposed to court packing, and then they won't take a position on Keep 9. And if we have letters from all the Democrats, you know, dodging Keep 9, that's a great story, and it's a great thing to share with friends, and maybe we can post it on social media and show people that the Democrats do not want to take a position on Keep 9. So number one you can do is reach out to your elected officials. Number 2 is you can join and participate and do things on social media. Now I'm not a very important person, right? I'm just a retired congressional staff person. I wrote a letter to the Wall Street Journal. It got published. Just my name, right? So any of you could write a letter to your local paper about how bad court packing would be and how important Keep 9 is, and it could get published. And people read those letters. The second thing you can do, of course, is social media. And some of you, how many of you are involved on some kind of social media platform? Hands. And so most of you are on a platform. You can spread the word. It doesn't matter what you say, just there's a Keep 9 amendment to ban court packing. The more people know about that, the more visibility we have. And who knows, you might find some people who would be interested in helping. And then, how many of you have listened to a conservative radio talk show? Anybody? So, okay, so if you're listening to the show, pick up the phone and call a producer and say, I want to talk about the threat by the left to pack the Supreme Court. And, you know, if these talk show hosts begin to hear from grassroots people that people think court packing is important and that Keep 9 is important, they're going to talk about it, right? They might even invite you or somebody else, maybe a leader of the Federation here in New York or somebody, to talk about the Keep 9 amendment, right? And, you know, one segment on Dan Bongino or Mark Levin or Hugh Hewitt is huge. So those are 3 things you can do, right? On the media. And then the third thing, right? Talk to elected officials, talk to the media. Third thing is ask other people to do the same thing, right? We can't have an impact, just 50 of us, but if there are 5,000 of us around the country, and that has an impact, right? 5,000 makes those talk radio hosts wake up. It makes politicians pay attention.